Sir, where have you been?
Yeah, I know. It's Monday. This game was from Thursday. I know. But there's only so much I can do when I can't record anything, so sorry. And so after a much anticipated and long wait, I can finally say Vegas Golden Knights win against the Buffalo Sabres by a final score of 7-4 on Thursday. So the Golden Knights went into this game with a pretty similar lineup to how they went into their previous game. The big difference being Paul Cotter is in, Michael Amadio is out, following his debatable-ish penalty that resulted in the shorthanded goal in Toronto. He may be out for injury. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm doing this with the benefit of 4 days of future sight. But ultimately, the game gets going in the goaltending battle being Logan Thompson versus Comrie. And so we get into the first period, and the Golden Knights get off to a pretty hot start. They're pushing the pace, as you would hope, for the last game of a 5-game road trip with a 9-game win streak, on the line. And ultimately, the pressure turns out to be a beneficial thing as Peyton Krebs takes a hooking penalty at 4:32. Now, that name may sound familiar. He's one of the players that came over in the Jack Eichel trade along with Alex Tuch. And the last time the Golden Knights played the Sabres in Buffalo, he scored a goal. So the fact that he's on the score sheet in the penalty column makes everyone feel a little bit more better about the fact that this may be just a past and present Golden Knights kind of game. And ultimately, that penalty would wind up being the kicking, honestly, it wound up being the starting point for what would be a very busy night for the Golden Knights, as Chandler Stevenson would get the power play goal to kick off the scoring and put the Golden Knights ahead 1-0. This was towards the very tail end of the first wave of the power play, which had looked pretty good up until this point anyway. Where Pietrangelo had the puck at the blue line. He passed it down to Marchessault, who was just above the right circle, who one-timed it on net, hit Comrie in the left leg pad, which kicked the puck out to Stevenson on the left point, completely wide open, no one around him, nobody even in front of the net, and ultimately Stevenson's not going to miss from there. And he taps it in from just below the dot and puts the Golden Knights ahead 1-0. Stevenson's 6th of the year from Marchessault and Pietrangelo at 5:44. And so following that goal, the middle of the period was basically all Golden Knights. They were definitely the faster team. They were definitely the better team. They were definitely the more skilled team. But ultimately, the shots weren't there. The possession was there, but they weren't landing a lot of shots on Comrie. And ultimately, that frustration would boil over to the point where Mark Stone took an interference penalty at 15:46 of the first period. And ultimately, the Sabres are a bit of a different team than what they were 6 months ago at the end of last season. Players have gotten better. As a team, they've gotten better and more confident, and it shows by their placement in the standings. And it also shows by this power play goal scored by Tage Thompson to tie the game up at 1. It was a really pretty passing play from Dahlin at the point to Okposo on the left dot. Okposo drew a lot of attention, and then he fired it across the ice to the right point where Tage Thompson is. He corralled it and kind of picked the corner on Logan Thompson to tie up the game. That's Tage Thompson's 9th of the year from Okposo and Dahlin at 16:23 on the power play. Golden Knights had a really good opportunity to get back ahead in this game. However, just a few seconds later on the next shift after the Thompson goal, Nick Hague thought he had scored his 2nd of the year, but ultimately it wound up getting called back because on the entry, everybody thought Nick Waugh had possession, but he wound up not having possession. So ultimately the play was offsides. And that, oddly enough, is where the play would end for the period, as nothing else really eventful happened for the last few minutes of the first period. So going into the second period, the Golden Knights know they're going to need to get better because the Sabres have a knack for staying in games and making things interesting when the games have no business being interesting. And it was obvious that the Golden Knights knew this and were going to do everything they could do to get out in front and run away with this game when they still had a little bit of pep in their step. And ultimately, it wouldn't take very long into the second period before the Golden Knights would try and act on this message with Phil Kessel putting the Golden Knights ahead 2-1. Now, this whole goal was set up by a really good play in the neutral zone by Cotter, who drew a defenseman and found Nick Waugh coming out of the defensive zone, kind of stealthily fed him the puck, and essentially set off a clear 2-on-1 from the blue line in, featuring the likes of Nick Waugh and Phil Kessel. Now, Waugh holds the puck coming down to Comrie's left, waits just long enough for Comrie to be more focused on the shooter and the defender to kind of break off to where Waugh fed it across to Kessel, and Kessel, he's played so many games in a row at this point, I've completely lost count. He's coming up on 1,000. And in those 1,000 games, almost in a row he's played, I am fairly certain this goal was one of the top 10 easiest he has scored. Because again, Comrie got yard sailed. He completely bit on the shot, and there was no way that he was going to be able to get across and save this shot from Phil Kessel from hitting a yawning 6x4 cage. So ultimately, that's Kessel's second of the year from Waugh and Cotter at 3:43 of the second period. And just like in the first period, following the goal, the period really kind of slowed down where the Golden Knights were the dominant team again, but ultimately weren't able to put anything past Comrie to extend their lead to more than just one. And like clockwork, Golden Knights' discipline comes back and bites them again as Mark Stone takes a tripping penalty at 12:29 of the second period. And this led to another very frustrating moment as Casey Mittelstadt would tie the game up again 2-2 on the power play, as this was a bit of a massive defensive breakdown on the power play penalty kill structure for the Golden Knights, which was really weird because that's something we've been particularly good at throughout the main portions of this regular season so far, with exception to that one game in Calgary that we don't talk about. This really bad defensive breakdown allowed Casey Mittelstadt to essentially walk through the middle of the ice off the boards and in front of Logan Thompson, completely uncontested, and ultimately just dangle his way around our young netminder and tie the game up at 2 on the power play. It was a little bit of a frustrating goal because the defenseman gave him that much space, but when watching it back, you realize you have to respect the pass, and the Sabres did have a guy on the off wing ready to one-time it past if Thompson bid on the shot, or the Golden Knights defender took on Mittelstadt in that low slot. So ultimately, whatever the reason, it is now 2-2 on Mittelstadt's third of the year from Cousins and Peterka at 14:09. That being said, this tie game status quo wouldn't last for very long, as the Golden Knights, in the form of Paul Cotter of all people, will get the lead back and take the lead 3-2. Now, this play was traditional Golden Knights transition scoring opportunity hockey, and it made me feel really good to see. Former Golden Knight Alex Tuch is trying to break into the zone, and Shea Theodore breaks him up, poking the puck to Nick Wall along the sidewall, who draws a little bit of attention and fires a very fast pass into the center of the ice, catching Paul Cotter in stride coming over the blue line, and he's in on a breakaway. Now, Paul Cotter's a new guy. He's very talented, and I was up on, super impressed with him all preseason, and he's played pretty well this year despite barely playing in any games. And this goal is just indicative of how much skill this young guy's got, as he fakes the shot between the hash marks to freeze Comrie and then goes backhand, forehand, around and over Comrie. He essentially falls forward on his face, and Cotter has the entire net to tuck it home, and he does, putting the Golden Knights ahead 3-2. This is Cotter's second of the year from Waugh and Theodore at 17:08. And that really is where the second period ground to a halt, as the Golden Knights continued to be the better team and continued to press the issue throughout the remainder of the second period, but ultimately, again, weren't quite able to light the lamp.
Now it's time for the fun part.
Oh goodness, who put this guy in charge? And now that we're heading into the third period, this is really where the game decides to take off. Now, in case you're wondering what's been going on with the elephant in the room in the form of Jack Eichel, he's been awfully quiet through the first 40 minutes of this game, but the fans have not been awfully quiet, as every time he's come onto the ice, let alone touch the puck, he is absolutely showered with boos from the Buffalo faithful. That being said, I have a feeling he's going to want to do something about that going into this third period, and he really didn't wait very long to get the activities going as well. He didn't score. He picked up his first point against the Buffalo Sabres in the form of assisting on Alex Pietrangelo's first goal of the season to open up the third period. This is a very scrappy goal, and yet it's the perfect goal for Eichel to get his first point against the Sabres and for Pietrangelo to get his first goal of the year. It was just a simple run-of-the-mill point shot that Pietrangelo just threw at the net, and it just so happened to go off of a Buffalo defender's glove and pass Comrie just inside the post to put the Golden Knights ahead by 2. This is Pietrangelo's first of the year from Eichel and Stevenson at 3:52 of the third period. And then very shortly after that, just a few minutes, Jack Eichel would really do something to make all the Buffalo fans angry and shower him with even more boos, as he would put the Golden Knights ahead 5-2, scoring his first goal against the Buffalo Sabres in Buffalo since he was traded. He took advantage of another big rebound off of Comrie. This is the second goal that Comrie gave up tonight on a massive rebound from a seemingly nothing point shot, as Pietrangelo fired it on the net from the point, ultimately, Eichel just got hit by the rebound in the skates, but because he was able to corral it so quickly and fire it on net, Comrie was never able to recover and get back into position, and that was that. Eichel scores his first goal against the Sabres. So Eichel's 7th of the year from Pietrangelo and Stevenson at 6:13. Now, unfortunately, that's kind of where the fun takes a little bit of a backseat because the Golden Knights do wind up making a bit of a mistake as Tage Thompson puts the game back in reach and makes it a little bit more interesting, putting the Sabres only down by 2 to a score of 5-3. When he's able to walk down the middle of the ice, walk down kind of the left wing middle-ish area with a defender kind of draped all over him, but because Thompson is 7'12" and is able to take so much space, he's got such a long stick, he's able to outmuscle our defenseman, walk down to just in front of Logan Thompson, and somehow go from right in the slot, right just inside of poke checking range, to putting the puck off the bar and in on the up above Logan Thompson. It's just proof that while Tage Thompson is young and he's interesting, he's got a lot of skill. As a Golden Knights fan, I have to admit that game has to acknowledge game. And ultimately, a little bit of Thompson on Thompson violence makes the game kind of interesting as Tage Thompson scores his 10th of the year, his 2nd of the game from Skinner and Hinostroza at 9:40. And then, just like clockwork, Jack Eichel starts doing Jack Eichel things again as he puts the Golden Knights back ahead by 3, scoring his 2nd of the game, making the score 6-3. This looked like a nothing play coming up the middle of the ice, but Eichel's release is absolutely insane, bonkers, crazy, nuts, fast. And if I were Comrie, I would have just chucked it in. I'd have phoned it in at that point because there's no way you were saving this one. It was just a weird play where Stevenson kind of fed the puck to the middle of the ice on a bit of a break-in. Eichel's got defenders all over him, and he just sweeps it. Sweeping it at the speed of light, mind you, but he's just swept it on net, and Comrie was frozen, and the puck went right between his legs and in the goal. And I'm sure Eichel was elated. You could tell by his reaction that every point he got against his former team was like vindication, and the fact that he's got 2 goals now in a row for the Golden Knights in this period, he's got to feel over the moon. His 8th of the year, 2nd of the game from Stevenson and Stone at 14:37. Now the Golden Knights have another opportunity to add to it just a few minutes later as Rasmus Dahlin takes a slashing penalty at 16:11. Unfortunately, that is not how it wound up going, as the Golden Knights would actually suffer a short-handed goal in the form of Rasmus Asplund, who just took advantage of a kind of lazy 3-goal lead style Golden Knights power play and was able to take advantage of a shot that was centered by Nick Cousins, and ultimately that was kind of it, as there was no defender back for the Golden Knights to interfere with the shot, and Thompson did the best he could to save the initial shot. While the rebound probably shouldn't have been there per se, there was really nothing anyone could do, and it's a 3-goal lead at this point. While it is frustrating to give up a shorthanded goal, the situation in which we gave up the shorthanded goal is probably the most palatable of all of them. That being said, defensive's got to be better. But anyway, the sentiment is we still have power play left, but for all intents and purposes, the power play ended when we gave up the shorthanded goal, and it's kind of how it looked. It looks like our forward core kind of phoned it in, just tried to get through the rest of the penalty kill without giving up another shorthanded goal, as the rest of the power play was just a bit of a disaster. And that was indicated by the fact that Riley Smith took a slashing penalty at 17:23 to kind of put the Golden Knights down a man again for the 3rd time. The penalty was efficiently killed by the Golden Knights with pretty minimal drama. It was just not a smart penalty in the form of Riley Smith, a player who is so smart in both ends, one of the best defensive forwards we have on the team. He knows better than to take a penalty at this point in the game, especially after the Sabres had just cut the lead down to 2. Buffalo did pull their goalie in the latter stages of the power play, and ultimately that set up another empty net situation that would continue all the way to the very end of the game. Well, I say the very end of the game, I mean 8 seconds before the very end of the game, when Jack Eichel lands the hat trick on the empty net goal to put the Golden Knights ahead 7-4. Now, he must have been absolutely elated with this hat trick. He hasn't scored a hat trick in any other building except in the Buffalo Sabres arena, 2 with the Sabres and now 1 with the Golden Knights. He had the opportunity to do it about 45 seconds earlier on in the shift, breaking into the offensive zone for the 83rd time this year. The Golden Knights have had the puck in the offensive zone with the opposing goalie out and not been able to score. But ultimately, it wasn't the 40-foot shot Eichel needed, which was blocked. It was actually the 190-foot shot that Eichel needed, because he basically shot it from behind the goal line and was able to find the net center cut right down the blue paint, no issue. And he knew it. He saw it all the way, and he was celebrating probably before the puck even crossed the red line. And ultimately, that was that. Eichel's 9th of the year, 3rd of the game, completes the hat trick. Assist from Martinez at 19:52 of the third period, and that put a bow on the Golden Knights' 9th consecutive win, caps off a perfect 5-0 road trip. Overall, this was another really solid game from start to finish for the Golden Knights, with exception to the couple of minutes where they made a few defensive mistakes on the power play and giving up the shorthanded goal in the third. We wound up outshooting the Sabres 36-35. We were 59% from the dot, 1 for 2 on the power play, 15 hits, 24 blocks, and 11 takeaways, most of which were perpetrated by Mark Stone himself, which doesn't surprise anyone. We got off to a really solid start, and even though we had some shaky moments, we were never really chasing the game, which is always a good place to be in, especially when you're on the last game of a road trip. Eichel finally got his revenge on the Buffalo Sabres, and they booed him mercilessly. I almost would hope that they didn't call him out on the ice as the first star of the game, even though I have a feeling they may not have had a choice. You know, you have to acknowledge a hat trick, regardless of whether or not the guy was playing for you just a year and a half ago. Win streak grows to 9. We are 1 win away from tying the longest win streak in franchise history, which is really, really, really exciting. The Golden Knights move to a record of 13-2, which is unheard of, maintaining first place in the NHL. This is the first ever perfect road trip, perfect 5-0 road trip in Golden Knights history. So that's something to be proud of, with winning all different ways on this road trip, whether it be overtime, whether it be blowouts, whether it be very much not blowouts. The Golden Knights played really well on this entire road trip, and I'm sure they're all happy to be going home for the first time in 2 weeks, with the next game up being against the St. Louis Blues at T-Mobile Arena. I don't really know what else to say. Congratulations, Jack Eichel, for your first hat trick as a Golden Knight. First hat trick the Golden Knights have scored since one of the last Golden Knights game I was at, when Riley Smith dunked a hat trick on the St. Louis Blues in one of the last games of the 56-game COVID-shortened season of 2020-2021. So a little bit of fun trivia there that I can say that I saw in person. You know, this, that, and the other thing. Can't really say anything else. That being said, if you like this video, be sure to like it. You really liked it, subscribe for more, because I try and do this all the time. I know this video is really late, but, you know, I try my best. Life happens. Comment down below if you want to, give me grief for taking 5 days to upload a really good game for the Golden Knights, or whatever. If you just want to interact with me, I love to talk. And I will catch you guys in the next one.